Quite interesting. You're still watching AM Sports coming your way from NTA Sports 24, and it's quite interesting to know you're still there. Now, I told you earlier that we'll be talking about one of the fastest growing sports in Nigeria, talking about American football. And evidently, we got the good news last week with the confirmation by the National Sports Commission that we now have a recognized federation for American football in Nigeria, talking about the Nigerian Federation of American Football. And earlier in the week, on Tuesday to be precise, we saw the inauguration of the new board led by Babajide Akeredolu as the president. And it's interesting for us to know that Babajide Akeredolu now joins us live on the show via Zoom this morning. President, many thanks for joining us on the show, and of course, congratulations.
Good morning. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
All right, it's been a long struggle, just like a Luther. And of course, at the end of the day, we're seeing the dividends. But I just want to know, how do you feel that finally we have a recognized federation for the governance and regulation of American football in Nigeria?
I mean, I feel good. We've been chasing this project since 2019. I think some people that were doing it even before us. And I think it's a testament to that recognition by the Sports Commission that this is a sport that has a lot of potential. And with this level of structure would ensure that we can grow exponentially. So it's pretty exciting. It's good that we can, at least fortunately for us, we get to hit the ground running because there's so many, everybody that came together to form the federation have already built a lot of infrastructure, built a huge solid foundation for the sport to excel. So it's a good point to be in right now.
Just like you said, I just want to know how significant could it be, to have one body regulating American football in Nigeria, and what were the challenges we were facing in the past when you had different bodies?
I mean, so how does it, as I said, it feels good. Honestly wouldn't say there were challenges faced with, because fortunately everyone was operating in their own different spaces. So our organization, which was NAFA, I know you interviewed us sometime last year, we're very predominantly grassroots. There were a few leagues. So everyone was operating in their own spaces, but now an amalgamation of this nature just brings all strengths together, everybody with their what they are good at into this one big body so that we can grow the sport. So I think that might be the biggest win because all our strengths are now coming into one to drive the sport's growth. And it's good to be in this position.
All right, quite beautiful. One would just, I'm quite inquisitive, I'm curious, I just want to know what role the National Sports Commission played, in making sure that you guys came together under one body and is recognized.
I mean, a pretty critical role. It was really at how do I say? It was at the not just direction of leadership of the DG, Mr. Olopade, that we are where we are. Because again, a lot of us had our differences, and he was still able to just bring us in and say, "Well, by hook or by whatever it takes, you guys need to come together." And I mean, he was able to pull it off. While here, I know we're better off for it. So.
All right, quite beautiful, and of course, many have been asking and they want to know, with the coming on board of Nfaf, does it change any structure? Because you were the president of NAFA, Nigeria American Football Association, and of course, we have other people joining you too. Do you now have maybe a tweak in the structure when it comes to NAFAF?
I mean, just to be sure, I think so. We were called Nfaf. Just to throw that in there, because the international federation is called IFAF. So we are Nfaf. And so again, the beauty about this, I guess, amalgamation is again, everybody's operations are doing again. We're all now basically members of the federation now, right? So I expect NAFA will continue to drive its grassroots projects. All the leagues that are currently in the system will continue to drive their leagues, and then it's just for us to sit down and see where our strengths, what can we build on, and then based on the experiences, how do we regulate, how do we ensure? Because as you know, the federation's primary responsibility is to is an enabling environment for as many people to grow. So I'm looking forward to having many more NAFAs many more associations. I'm sure you have to create state level associations need to come on board. So there's a lot of things that need to happen. So yeah, and of course the space is huge. We're a 250 million population country. I mean, based on our numbers, barely 14 or 15,000 people are playing the sport. So we're just scratching the surface. So we need many more NAFAs, we need many more showtimes, we need many more Abuja flag football, we need as many more people coming in to contribute to the sport. And our job is just to give that leadership and guidance and create an environment for them to thrive. So I'm more of a I have a more collaborative mindset. So it's less about we want to control as opposed to we want to build that environment so that more people can come into the sport and help it grow. You can never, one federation can't do everything. You need a lot of support from everyone.
All right, quite beautiful. You've answered, a part of my question because I wanted to ask you, like, now being the president of NAFAF, NFAF, how does, how does that, really help you? Does it change any responsibility for you? It does look like your responsibilities now have increased because you could just be responsible for, just like you said, now all through the 36 states of Nigeria, including what's it called, the Federal Capital Territory. So tell us about this new responsibility.
I mean, it's going to be interesting. I mean, fortunately for us prior to the establishment of the federation, a lot of work had been done by NAFA to help build some level of structure, right? So because a lot of these things exist, it's now, some of those activities, especially with like state structures and whatnot, we'll be looking at how they would help prop. So as I said, unlike maybe a brand new federation that is starting from scratch, they have to start to figure out what do we do. But with an organization like ours, again, we're not even not running, we're sprinting because there's already a lot of work that has been done by so many parties, right? So again, there are leagues that are already running, there are programs at the grassroots level that are already running. So the federation is, I would argue, it's the most fortunate federation because it has so much structure in place that it can leverage on. So yes, responsibilities are more because again, more stakeholders and just trying to make sure everybody's on the same page. But beyond that, I think the responsibilities are less because unlike just us as an organization, what we used to be, now there is so many more other people that are coming in. I suppose there are people that have been in the tackle football space for years that are into. There's so many people that are going to be coming in at the same time that it makes the work a little more easier. So the responsibility now is how do we look at, this holistic perspective around what everybody's doing and how do we see that we can leverage all that experience to execute and do something phenomenal. So.
All right, quite beautiful. And of course, I want to ask you, being the president of NAFA and now becoming president of NFAF, I keep calling it NAFAF. It's because it wasn't easy for me to move from NAFA to NFAF. You get it? We've been following NAFA for a long time, and now we're moving to NFAF. Now, looking at it, what were the what would you say, you experienced as the president of NAFA that you feel, will help you in this new role that you have now, which is one. And secondly, we know that at times when you have, it's just like in football in Nigeria, we have like almost 9 supporters club and they want to bring them together. So not everybody will be the president. It's only one person that will be the president at the end of the day. So what are you doing to show, inclusiveness that, everybody is involved in this, you're carrying everybody around. So 2 in 1, how your previous role prepared you for this, and of course, how you're carrying everybody along.
Well, I think that's a very good question. I think our previous role, because when we had started NAFA in 2019, again, we were trying to build basically a sport that was not known. As I think I remember the first time I came to you, I had said everybody still calls the sport rugby. So you had an awareness issue. So when you're building from scratch, right, there are all those difficulties of how do you navigate building the right partnerships? How do you drive, inclusion and all of those sort of things? Because we set up in 2019, you're the sustainable SDGs and sport for development. So those kind of perspectives are things that we're trying to navigate. How do you balance those sort of things? And of course, back then, funding was always a challenge. So how do you find ingenious ways to fund your operations, or how do you run a very lean operation, those sort of things, right? Because again, you didn't have government support back then. So I think what that brings me in, or us into, with this, in this new dispensation, is there's already a very clear understanding of how to grow a sport, because we've been able to do that, right? So now, as I've said, you're not now going from zero, you're now trying to build on what you've done. And of course, having the right partnerships, again, with NUGA, with NSSF, now with the NSC, it's now, okay, well, you have experience of working with government agencies. And so all of those things that have come to bear, coming to this particular point, meaning you know how to operate within the government space, you know what to expect when you're working with a government agency, or when you're working now, you're an entity under government. You have all those experiences that you can put in. So I think those are some of the biggest things that come into the picture. The other thing that is also a big win is, again, a lot of existing relationships that have been built over the years, that, again, with the transition, it's still one of those relationships will still come to bear, especially with international sports federations. The international federation itself, and quite a number of those relationships are very critical at this particular transition point. So it's good that the transition is going to be, expecting it's going to be somewhat seamless, and we'll work hard towards that. And then, sorry, what was the second question again?
How you're bringing everybody along?
Oh yeah, first and first, the beauty is the constitution of, I think the first step, and I quite remember the first step towards even establishing the federation involved and invites all those stakeholders. I remember we had to do it. We even funded flying as many stakeholders into Abuja as possible. So from the jump, we've always believed in inclusion and ensuring everybody works together. So with a board that's set up that has a very diverse group of people, leagues, associations, individuals that are representing, NAFAN, NAWIS, AFAN, all these new stakeholders that some of us we didn't even know existed until this was put together. I think for us, it's just been, we've always run a very inclusive organization from the jump. And so I've always had that mindset of committee and consensus. And so that's always been my position on how things should be run. And that's why prior to the federation, NAFA was so successful. We always ran a very inclusive organization. So the biggest thing we need to do is the biggest thing I bring to bear is I like to listen, and most importantly, I want to ensure that everybody has their voice and their voices are heard. So it's always been what we've done. Those that know our organization know what we do. So we're bringing that same mindset into this. Consensus and committee, that's the only way you can work in this dispensation where you have so many different points of views coming together. So it might take time, but like I said, we're not starting from the beginning. So you can still leverage what you have and then start to build that consensus until you're able to, hit the ground, or rather build on what you've already established.
All right, quite interesting. For some of us who know you, we know what how you did with flag football, and of course, even defeating the host nation and qualifying for the World Championships, which is very much huge, and Nigeria could be on our way, to the Olympics. Now, before we go, into a bit of flag football, I would like you to, do a bit of, explaining for, viewers at home, those who might not understand. What is tackle football? What is flag football? Explain all these forms under American football.
Wonderful, thank you for that. So, as you know, American football is a sport that started in the United States. That's why it's called American football. As you know, if you're in North America, it's just called football. So Canada and the US call it football. But because we have our football here, there is a identifier, which is why it's called American football. So American football is very similar to rugby in the sense of a ball is held in your hands, even though it's called football, but the ball is held in your hand, is thrown, and you're trying to score a point. What most people know is American football is the version that you wear helmets, you wear pads, and then there's a lot of hitting and tackling. And of course, the goal is, how do I get the ball from one end of the field to the other end of the field? And that's the basic idea of American football. Then the tackle version has 11 people on the field, like soccer, like football. And your goal is, how do I get my guy in a position to score? And you score by, catching the ball or running the ball into a rectangle at the end of the field. Now, where flag football comes in was they wanted more inclusion and more people playing the sport. So they created a less what's it called? Less contact version of American football, where this time instead of wearing helmets and expecting contact between yourselves, you wear flags on your waist. And when you wear those flags on your waist and someone pulls the flag, it's like they're simulating being hit, stopping you at a point. So those are the major differences. The only other thing now is the international version of flag football generally is 5 versus 5. So it's the male team and the female team. And like you alluded to, last year, Nigeria played in the Continental Games in Egypt, and we took gold for both male and female. So we represent the continent in the World Games in Germany later in August. And hopefully, when we do well, we would qualify for the Olympics.
Nigeria is on the right trajectory, and of course, we cannot wait for Nigeria to impress at the World Games. Just before we go deeper into that, one we just want to know, in terms of popularity and of course spread and development, which one has really gone that far in Nigeria between flag football and tackle football?
Oh, that is not even a question. So tackle football, for the most part, has been active in Nigeria since maybe 2008. And by 2011, let's go. I think we have time, so I'll give you history. So by 2011, a team was set up in Kaduna, Zaria, called ABU Titans. And then about the same time, I think it's 2013, another team was set up called the Lagos Marines. And then another team was set up in Akwa Ibom called the Ibom Tigers. So we've had a lot of tackle activity between 2008 to about this time, but it never got that chance to really grow because, again, it's expensive. The biggest impediment to tackle football is the cost, because the average cost of equipment is very, very significant. Health insurance is critical, and at those times, our health sector is still going through its growing pains, and it's very hard to have a sport like that people are very prone to injury, to just work in a system where we're still figuring out how the health sector. So when flag football became a thing in Nigeria in 2017, but 2016, it exploded. So cumulatively, you can argue, throughout the years, so the last 20 years or so of tackle, you're talking a few hundreds of people have gone through those programs. But with flag football, like with NAFA's secondary school league, every year it's 4,000 or 5,000 kids playing flag in 18 states. So when it comes to growth, you can't even compare. The trajectory of flag football is significant. And I know we used to say that our goal is we just need 3 to 5 million people playing flag, and just 2 or 3% of that be interested in tackle football, and we have the kind of numbers we need to run a proper league for tackle. So flag is supposed to end up being a pathway to growing tackle football, because tackle is where all the interest is where most of the opportunities are. Although that is beginning to change, but we don't see that much of a change for the next 5 to 10 years. So in the interim, if you're going to create opportunities for people, as you saw, I'm sure in the Super Bowl, you saw that there are 4 Nigerians that played in the team that won, the Seattle Seahawks. And again, those are major opportunities, but at the same time, with the way flag is growing, we can create much smaller opportunities in Nigeria. The leagues we have now, referees are getting paid in these leagues, players are getting paid in some of the semi-pro leagues, and so there's all of this activity that's going on. But yeah, flag is definitely number one. It's the fastest growing, and it's our biggest opportunity to really get Nigerians playing sport.
All right, for some Nigerians, they might not know that, the money in this, in this sport, especially if you go professional, could be crazy. Now, I don't want to put it directly to you if you're going to be prioritizing in maybe tackle football or, flag football. But one thing that, I can pick from what you said, because I wanted to ask you about it already, is like, you said flag football is fast, gaining momentum too. People are getting interest, beginning to show interest. So, and of course, with what Nigeria did recently, it raised a lot of awareness. Some people, that was the first time they heard about flag football. And if you look at these two, you could see men being interested in tackle football. Women
Oh,
that say,
and
no,
will
I don't
enjoy
want
it.
them. You understand? Women could be very much interested in flag football. So, number one, are you going to prioritize any? And for flag football, is there any way that the federation is also getting prepared that if this thing blows, we're ready?
Oh yeah, I mean, so again, our federation is just how many days old? It's 3 days old. So
3 days old now before.
we are building a 3 to 5 year strategic plan. That is expected for any organization like this. So I mean, have some sort of medium term strategic plan. That's what I mean. Well, I guess my experience in government tells me that is the first thing you should do. And so yes, we have a strategic plan. I mean, the beauty is with the structure of our federation, there's a vice president for flag football, there's a vice president for tackle. So you have people that have their responsibilities, right? And as you said, I mean, the cost implications for going into tackle is pretty high. So the approach you would take to growing tackle will be very different from flag. Like we always say, in flag football, all you need is an American football and 10 sets of flags. So if I'm going to give a rough estimate, um, that's like 75,000 plus. So at most, let's even say on the higher end, or well, let's even say you buy a rubber ball instead. At most, 100,000 naira, right? At most, that is pretty high. But call the flag. We're getting quality flags and no change. 100,000 naira will get a secondary school plane, and they are good to go, right? And we just send someone to just train them. But if you're going to go for tackle football, I don't even think 10 million naira is enough. Because you have to get equipment. If you're going to do it properly, you need to even build. There's a lot that goes into tackle. We tackle because of the size of the field itself. If you don't have a standard soccer field now, then you don't have enough. You might need to look for, but with flag is 5 versus 5 most of the time. So the dimensions you need, most schools have existing fields. Because I forgot to mention that one of the reasons why this sport has seen the exponential growth it has seen over the last 6 years is also because we've been able to use the existing infrastructure. It's very critical because I'm sure if you're looking at basketball or something, we have to build. But no, with flag, any soccer field that's on ground is good enough to just get a flag football team playing. All right. So that's been one of the biggest advantages the sport has had over many other sports and why it can grow as fast as it has grown. So yes, when you look at that perspective, your strategy for a version of the sport that needs significant investment will be slightly different from the strategy for a version of the sport that is more grassroots, what's it called, oriented. It was designed for the grassroots. It was designed to allow maximum engagement. Strategies will be different. And so I'm not going to say you're prioritizing one more than the other. I'm just saying the strategies to expanding both versions of the sport will be very unique.
All right, quite interesting. Whether we like it or not, as the federation, I'm sure you like this to really spread. Especially also, we cannot forget the grassroots schools from primary to secondary to universities. And we don't, just like you said, if so many people know that with 100,000 they can do flag football, and there are so many schools that they have the money, universities, private universities that will say, okay, we can set up this American football thing. So what is the roadmap? What are the plans to go to the grassroots and, of course, schools to propagate the gospel of American football?
I mean, I think the biggest thing I will confess this will be a bias, but it's not up to me to decide. The board will decide. The one of the biggest things I'll recommend to the board, if anybody's watching, is let Nfaf support what NAFA is doing with the School Sports Federation. Let's expand the reach, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be biased, but no, fundamentally, there's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? There's been a massive grassroots development initiative that's been championed by a member of the federation, and it just makes sense to grow that exponentially, expand that significantly. And where a lot of work hasn't been done has been in the K through 12 space, so kindergarten to 12-year-olds. And we believe that is somewhere that's untapped. If you also look at the secondary school space. And again, major credit to the Nigeria School Sports Federation for being a major partner in growing the sport in Nigeria. It's always been, how do you expand to more schools? Right now, it's about things like 280 schools around the country are active in the sport. That, of course, that we have direct information on. And there's already a move for this year to grow that to 500. But that's not enough, because when we ran some numbers, we assumed if you grew by 300 or 400 schools, secondary schools per year, and let's assume our term is, we only get a 4-year term. By the end of that point, it's only about 4,000 schools. When we round the number, that's less than 3 or 4% of secondary schools in Nigeria. That's not even up to all the secondary schools in just Ondo State. And so it's like, we're just scratching the surface. So as a federation, nobody has an unlimited fund. So the biggest thing you want to do with that growth is collaborate. I've always been a big what's it called, proponent of collaborating. So you need to ensure that there are many other organizations that are also helping drive, and you're ensuring and encouraging them to go into more schools, help build more programs, help build more leagues, just continue to grow and grow and grow, because you don't have enough. When you look at the football ecosystem is very mature. Like, every nook and cranny has a sports soccer academy, right? Every state has an association. There's something going on in every part of Nigeria that relates to soccer. That it is not directly managed or run, but of course there's oversight, but it's not direct. So it's like, how do we get more people? And the biggest way for us in the short term is a lot of our Nigerian players in the diaspora that are doing extremely well and are passionate and know the sport. We have started to court them, say, come in. Many of them have NGOs that do a lot of things, so we want to keep telling them, come do more, come continue to drive the grassroots growth. And then, of course, on our end too, we develop the right sort of initiative to make them happy and make them continue to support. And, we understand why in Nigeria, and again, funding for sports is not going to be, you don't expect the federal government to just say, oh, here's a blank check. There are so many sports they need to manage. So we need to be creative in how we ensure that we get more partners to come in and support.
All right, quite beautiful. And of course, we know another aspect when it comes to, any federation, any type of sports. We always talk about the officiating and, of course, the coaching. So,
Yes.
Another thing is that you need to develop more coaches and more officials
Exactly.
for the game in Nigeria. So, how do you want to go about that?
I mean, so, fortunately for us, a lot of work has been done in officiating in the country as a whole. I think at least this is one part where every league, I would argue that might be the central point with a lot of what we have. Every league or every program that's currently active has fed off some of what the officiating activity that has been done over the years. And so one of the first critical things we've been doing with the International Federation, actually, and with Africa as a whole, is discussing over how does Africa come together. This was we had this conversation, actually, I think I can say it publicly. We had this in Switzerland at the last Congress, and it was over how do we centralize certification for the continent. Because that way, it's not, if you get a certification in Nigeria, you can go coach in Egypt, or you can go ref in Egypt. You can go ref in Cameroon, you can go ref in Ghana. So these are conversations that have already started being had. And we're excited that, again, we've had a lot of collaborations already with officiating staff in Nigeria, with all of our other colleagues. We had it was just late last year, there was already officiating clinics that we had 3 levels. There's what you call expert coaches now. We have level 3 referees now in Nigeria that can go and where, if I should note that our trip to Egypt, some of our refs refed in Egypt officially. And so a lot of partnerships with the International Federation are ongoing to ensure that we have we have a lot of capacity for officiating and coaching. And so we'll continue to do that. And I should also note that the special initiative that is also focusing on women in American football. I shouldn't go to sleep on that. There's a very deliberate effort to ensure that we have parity in the amount of men and women that officiate. I should note, for example, in last year's secondary school national competition, the finals was officiated by an all-women officiating crew, and that was the first in, at least in Africa, that I can say that confidently, that it was an all-women officiating crew, all of them certified by the International Federation. So it's a pretty exciting thing. So as I keep telling you, we're not hitting the ground from scratch. We're hitting the ground running, sprinting. So it's a lot of things that have been done over the years that we can build. We just need to build on.
All right, quite beautiful. Now there's another aspect that we really need to talk about. That's funding. We do know that getting the equipment and all that is capital intensive, so you need the money. So what are the plans? How do you plan to bring in money?
Yes, funding is a very big challenge for all. I mean, existing leagues, associations. I mean, NAFA, of course, Nfaf would not be any different. Um, you know, at least I've always said, now I know we have a very good product. We've always had very good products that are all around the country. But with this federation being properly established and with some level of government support, we want to be able to now take our products. I think, again, there are quite a lot of very good products. I mean, the entertainment value, and then the outreach value, and then the awareness value that a lot of organizations or corporations or businesses will get from products that are already there, it's second to none. And so I think the biggest thing again is just engaging the right corporate bodies from the jump. I know we're already close to going to each Germany in a few months. We're already in the round up. We need to raise a lot of funds. So if anybody's watching and you want to help Nigeria win gold and go to the Olympics, please reach out to us. We need help. It's not going to be easy. I think a lot of us in the sport have been funding things out of our passion. It's still in trickles because it's such a very new sport. I've visited a lot of banks, and then of course they'll prioritize the big three. They'll prioritize soccer or football. They'll prioritize tennis. They might prioritize basketball. Of course, most bank executives are golf players. A lot of time they'll prioritize golf. We all know polo's history. People, so you're battling some very heavy sports that many people would want to prioritize first. So we want to continue to raise awareness, and then from the awareness we raise, we know we'll continue to get a lot of interested parties. I mentioned something around sports for development, and that's the space that NAFA played in for a while. I can speak to that and how we're able to get support in very unique ways, and of course, chasing the right kind of grants, even for the federation itself. There are a lot of grants that are out there and of course, it's all about your messaging too. And so we're looking at very ingenious ways. I mean, we expect we expect so from the Sports Commission, yes, but we know it's not going to be enough. So we're looking at very ingenious ways. So some of our key messaging is how do we give the right messaging that we're an organization, a federation that is driving sports for development. And once you have that right messaging, you know that from grant, of course, from support that we'll get from a lot of our diasporans, but a lot of players are really keen on wanting to help grow the sport. And they've been waiting for this. So now that we're where we are, a lot of them have started to reach out to say, hey, how else can we help? Then, of course, again, packaging a lot of our leagues, a lot of our programs to the right organization, saying, look, this thing is, I mean, there's value for you. Because again, it's not enough to just say, come and support the sport, but everybody will ask where the value is. Again, the value lies in our numbers, it lies in our growth trajectory, it lies in the opportunities. So.
All right. Quite beautiful. Definitely, we're going to have part 2 of this conversation. We'll keep in touch. But I want to thank you for your time this morning. It's been beautiful. And of course, I wish you all the best in your new role as the president of Nfaf. Congratulations again.
Thank you so much. All right, then. Take care. Have a good one.
All right. Thank you. All right, I've been speaking with the brand new president of the Nigeria Federation of American Football, Babajide Akeredolu, and it's been an interesting discussion on, everything that happened, prior to them coming on board, and of course, now that they're on board, their plans and policies, all the things they plan to achieve, and of course, just like I said, the conversation will continue. It's quite interesting to know. All right, we're not done on the show. I think we just need to take a breather. By the time we return, let's quickly talk about the trending stories in the world of football, especially some results that we got yesterday night, and of course the fixtures for this weekend. Do stay with us.